Hey, it's Paris. You know, I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Well, look, and there's a long history of like hypersexualization in women's sports, and you can look at the history of the WNBA if you want to understand how that has been. I mean, look at back in the 80s or early 90s where they were playing in spandex. One of the first Olympic sports that women were allowed to compete in was tennis, and they were only allowed to compete in it because it was feminine, it looked feminine, they could wear skirts, and they were forced to wear corsets while they competed. Like, women were coming off the tennis court, taking their corsets off and bleeding, because that's what a corset does when you try to play a sport. It's not news that women tend to be held to a different set of standards than men do. And if you're a man listening to this, hang in there. I promise this isn't a man-bashing episode. What this looks like in sports is that often, if not always, women athletes are also expected to be humble, healthy, and great role models. It also looks like a disproportionate level of concern for women's safety, health, and fairness when compared to the level of concern in men's sports. And this was on peak display after Pauline Ferrand-Prévot won the Women's Tour de France. I'm Meredith Root, and on today's episode of the podcast, we are getting into the disparity in expectations, treatment, and discourse that surrounds women and the sports they do. We are being so productive today.
I know. I'm exhausted.
I don't know when Sundays became like the most taxing day of the week, but I think they are.
I really like taking advantage of Sundays to get a lot of work done ahead of the week.
Yeah, they've become a real work day for you.
Yeah.
They're also a work day for me, but a different type of work.
But in my defense, I do take lighter days.
Yeah.
Wednesday is a pretty light day for me.
Yeah.
And so I kind of justify working a bit more on Sundays.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Totally. Yeah, it's a good, especially if it's raining, which isn't today. It was yesterday.
But if I wanted to do something on Sunday, I can shift things around a little bit.
You have flexibility.
Yeah.
And that's the blessing and the curse of being your own
Yes.
boss. That is it. It's hard to believe that, I don't know about you, but I have basically the Sunday scaries, but for summer. I have like the summer scaries.
100%.
Because it's August.
The leaves are falling.
And I'm like, shoot, summer's over. It's not, but it feels like I'm like winter's in the air.
I know. And it's only mid-August.
I keep reminding myself that last year we had a great summer that extended really until like mid-October.
Yeah, I count summer, like fall and summer are the same to me. If I'm running on pavement, it's still summer.
Okay.
Even if I mean, summer's more like I'm wearing shorts. You're not really wearing shorts into October here.
Yeah.
But I'm still running on pavement, so I count it as like good months.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. And then the whole, we buy our ski passes in like June.
Mm-hmm.
And that's trippy because you almost feel like ski season just ended. And then it's like, wait, you want me to buy ski passes again? But the benefit of that is when ski season actually rolls around, you're like,
you don't have to buy passes.
These are free. I have a free season's pass. Yeah, it's wild. But speaking of skiing, this is a crazy story. Why are you laughing?
It's not that crazy. I feel like this always happens to us.
Well, what? What always happens?
Okay, this is going to sound kind of braggy, but it's more not braggy and more grateful. We kind of get what we want.
Yeah. Yes. We keep finding ourselves in unique opportunities with really interesting people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still working on one person.
Yeah. TBD.
TBD on Brandy Carlisle.
Yeah, that one's been in the works for a minute.
We have been trying, but no one's taken the bait.
Yeah. We're as close as we've ever been, though.
Mm-hmm.
So, just stay strong. This is where, this is going to be a real testament to consistency.
Yeah.
And like long-term commitment.
Yeah. Like, are we ever going to meet Brandy? It's not even meet. I want to be in her circle.
Yeah. I just want to I want to go beyond meeting.
Yeah.
I want to be like friends. I want to be someone that she will like shoot off a text to.
Yeah.
Be like, you won't believe this happened. To
Meredith. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe even a group text.
Yep. So we'll see.
Dream big, people.
Shoot your shot. Okay. Much smaller scale. As you know.
Still cool.
Still pretty cool. I am predominantly like an adult. I learned how to ski as an adult, mostly. Like I would go on the odd trip when I was younger. And then when I was in my early to mid 20s, we would take a trip here and there to but really like one ski trip per season kind of thing, and intermittent. I think before I had met you, I could probably count the number of days that I had skied on like my hands and feet. It was not very many. And so a lot of my ski ability that I have now, I had to learn as an adult, which is super hard. It's very similar to learning how to swim, which we've talked about. For you, there are people who grow up skiing, and then there are people who learn as adults. Just like there are people who grow up swimming, and then there are people who learn to swim as adults. It's really similar. And it's really hard. Like the amount of progress is so marginal. Like day to day, week to week, season to season. It just feels like it happens really slow. So you just have to be committed to it and really enjoy it, which I do. So, you, Alex, are a phenomenal skier. It's like poetry in motion. It's hard actually to believe that you didn't go to the Olympics, if I'm being totally honest, because I'm like, how did this person not just like, how are her gold medals not raining on your head?
Okay, that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
I know. And I mean it. Like that's when you see it in person, you're just like, wow, people can ski like that? But what you are not is you are not as good of a teacher.
No.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I didn't go into coaching. Skiing. I'm not great at coaching physical movement.
Yeah.
I'm a good coach in other ways, but like my desire is to just say like, just do this. Just do what I do. Just like do better.
Yeah. And maybe that's how, like, you're a watch and do kind of person. I don't know. Are you?
Yes. Physically, I'm very adept with like very athletic. So I'm a visual learner as well.
Yeah.
And I can take feedback quite well. I mean, you know how my swimming is. It's not great.
Yeah.
But I think I probably improve faster than the average person. Or I'd like to think that.
Probably.
There was this card I saw once, and this sums up pretty much like how I feel about coaching. Is it says like get better soon. Yeah. And then the inside of the card says, because right now you really suck at skiing or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just need to buy those in bulk and give them to people. But then I'm like, nah, I'm not that savage.
Yeah.
Anyways, I have helped a little.
Yeah.
When you were really beginner, I was just like, wait, what?
You're probably like, how is someone this bad at
my
skiing?
parents were helpful at the start with like the basics, like pole plant. Because I'm like, it's kind of like trying to teach someone how to walk. I'm like, I don't know. You just do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I picked up on.
Yeah.
You were like, here, let's do a bunch of drills that I did when I was a kid or whatever. And we would just go out there and do like every drill that you had ever done in like no real order with no real progression. It would just like, let's see how this goes.
I remember once I was like, give me your poles.
And then you just skied off. And I was like, what? There was no like, hey, you're going to ski to me without poles. You're like, give me your poles. And then you left. I was like, do I stand here and wait for you to come back on the chair? But you're obviously like too far away for me to have a conversation with. Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't that bad.
No, I know.
I would wait for you intermittently.
This is all to say I've had to get my instruction elsewhere. And I did a women's ski group last year. I've done like some sessions here and there, but mostly like I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and specifically I watch Deb Armstrong YouTube videos, who I think her channel is called Ski Strong. But if you just look up Deb Armstrong, like you'll find her. She is American. She was on the Olympic team. She won a gold medal back probably in the 80s. Like, let me just look up gold medal. And I remember watching, 1984. She won a gold medal in the giant slalom. And I remember watching that video, and it's so chaotic because she's on these like, they're on like crazy long skis. And it's actually crazy that people could maneuver skis like that. So anyways, she has an amazing instructional YouTube channel, really good Instagram. And I find her like cues are really good. And she is often videoing either herself doing things as she's skiing, or she's got someone with her and she's videoing that person. So like big fan of Deb Armstrong. And she's also one of us. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
You know what I mean? Yeah, just really, really big fan. So a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, maybe a little longer, I get a follow on Instagram, and it's Deb Armstrong. I was like, oh, wow.
Was it better than when I got followed by Rosie O'Donnell?
It was up there. I think Rosie follows me now too.
I think she does.
Yeah. But she followed you first.
Yeah.
And that was pretty amazing. And then I came after that. And
it was she followed me after I posted the video of when I got mistaken for your son.
Right. Yeah. That was it. So she follows me, and I was like, wow, I should like send her a message and just be like, just thank her for all the help with skiing, because it's been amazing. I never did that. I mean, it's been on my mind to do. And she follows our business account. Yeah, and so that was just kind of cool. And then I've seen her like liking some of our content here and there. And I did that post last week on adult onset athleticism, and she liked and she commented and was just like big fan of that post and said like, come to Steamboat. And Deb runs these camps, these like Ski Strong camps in Steamboat and I think in Taos a couple times a year in the wintertime. And I've looked at going to them, but they're like, it's a commitment. You have to travel. They're a little on the expensive side. And so for me, I was like, we'll see. Like maybe I'll go do that one day. And then, but in the meantime, I did my early girls group, and it's been something that's like in my head. I was like, maybe one day I'll do that. That would be really cool. And so she said that, and I commented back and said, that's an invitation, like something, I'll be there or whatever. I can't remember what I said. I was starstruck. And then she basically was like, no, seriously, message me. We'll talk. I was like, what? So I spent most of yesterday typing, deleting, retyping the message that I was going to send to Deb Armstrong that like, isn't too gushy, but like I wanted to tell her a little bit about who we are and like thank her, but not give her my whole life story, and definitely not have it be so long that it comes as two messages, the dance.
Yeah. Okay.
And so long story short, I sent a message off and I had, a little chit chat with Deb Armstrong, and it's not even like I might go to one of her camps. Like it sounds like it's an open invite for you and me just to go hang out with her in Steamboat and ski around and make some content and like get to know her. I was like, shut up. And that I'm just like, I can't contain it. I had to tell everybody. and I hope that happens. It sounds like she's busy in the wintertime because she instructs and she does these camps and she's famous and all this stuff. But she was like, I'll squeeze you in. We'll make it happen. Just let me know when you can get down here to Steamboat. And I was like, you will see us this winter.
I was always like a big Nancy Green. Because Nancy was like, when I was really young, that's when she was quite good. And like was kind of someone who led the charge for like Canadian women's ski racing.
She's a little older, I think.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, she was a senator also.
Oh.
Says former Canadian senator. Interesting. Seems like she's won quite a few things.
Yeah, she's good.
Yeah.
A Canadian treasure.
I just we keep finding ourselves in these opportunities. Like with Rebecca Rush doing the podcast, like getting to know her, like it just like kind of keeps happening. I'm not a big like manifest person, but I do think that there's a lot to be said for just, being authentic with who you are and trying to be a good force in the world and putting that out there and sharing, and the way that can help bring people together and connect you with people who, you may find yourself surprised to be connected with.
I think it's kind of what Brandy has said, not directly to us, unfortunately, yet, but in her book and stuff, about there's no harm in reaching out. And that's kind of what we've done in a lot of instances, like with Rebecca Rush, having a platform to provide for people, like to be able to share their stories and what they're doing, especially if they're doing great stuff and helping other people.
Yeah.
So I think it is genuine, but it's also like not being hesitant to connect.
Yeah.
And take advantage of when opportunities present themselves. Like if someone comments on a post, like, okay, they notice us, like this is a great opportunity for me to reach out.
Yeah.
Like there's no harm. The worst thing that happens is she doesn't respond back. Like
that's it.
Then you just put her on the blacklist. Just kidding.
Dead to me, Deb. Yeah, I guess that's the right way. You have to be willing to put your neck out there a little bit and take opportunities when they present themselves, because typically, like a lot of times, they're not presented more than once, and they're not presented for long.
Yeah,
just because that's the kind of the world that we live in. But
I think a lot of people want to connect, and this is on a bigger scale, but also just on a very, very personal scale. And I think everyone is like somewhat hesitant because there's that fear of rejection, even if it's, professional or a friend thing. But then there's also just like this thing that a lot of us live with where we don't want to put somebody else in a challenging spot or make somebody feel a certain way. But I think often when you're asked to do something, like you can say no, you can say not right now for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people genuinely like being asked for connection.
Yeah.
But we just don't do it enough because we're afraid of the what if.
Yeah.
The what if negative. But we're easy to not focus on the what if positive.
Yeah.
What if she responds back? What if she invites us to hang out?
Mm-hmm.
I think for us, especially too, having been athletes in our childhood and also more so in adult life, a lot of our friendships and connections are outside of our small community in Fernie.
Yep.
So making the effort to go and visit people has really helped build connection. Like going to Idaho to see Rebecca at RPI, even in CrossFit, like going to Vegas to go visit Margot.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference. Even though it is a big effort, you put in the effort when you want to connect with someone extra special.
Right. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited. I'm also excited to go back to RPI and hang with Rebecca and do that ride again, do the stage race this time. So speaking of stage races, what we are talking about today is a little bit about the Tour de France Femme, the women's Tour de France, and Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, who's, of course, the winner of the women's Tour de France, and sort of got tangled up in some controversy about her body weight, which for us spurred a bigger and deeper conversation about double standards in sports, misogyny in sports, and kind of where this concern for women's safety comes from, and why you don't see the same concern over men's athletes or even see it applied uniformly for women. So, perfect podcast topic, I thought. Alex.
Yeah, I agree. I think initially, I don't follow sports that closely, as I've mentioned, but what I do follow is often what's happening on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And there was quite a bit of chatter about it that wasn't what I was expecting.
Yeah.
And as an I think then people started to reach out to us asking us what we thought about it. And you responded to a few people in DM before we posted about it. But I think we provide a unique perspective because we come from the world of health, but we also are and have been high-level athletes ourselves.
Yeah.
So we can say, you know, yeah, this may or may not be healthy, but also like, you know, the same standard for health can't really be applied to high-level athletes.
Yeah.
And that's a really important point, and that's kind of the crux of it.
Yeah, and this certainly, like, cycling is fraught with discussions on weight, and it has been for a long time. There are athletes who have come forward where you know, they do talk about their history of disordered eating. They do talk about pressures that are put on them from team organizers. Clara Koppenberg posted somewhat recently, and I have to believe it probably is sort of related to the timing around Pauline, but you know, she made this post, and it's got these really sort of startling pictures of her when she was very thin, and you know, talks about her history with eating habits and professional cycling, and how ultimately, like, she was kind of not necessarily forced to retire because she's still racing, but she's not winning anymore, and that's because, like, she decided to put on weight. So, I mean, and even in the men's race, like, you know, in the 80s, I think Greg LeMond, who's a very famous American racer, came out, and I think when he won the Tour, he was like 4% body fat, and he, you know, was kind of straight up like, you can be 4% body fat for a short period of time, but you can't stay there for very long. And so to back up about, you know, to talk about Pauline and where some of this comes from with her, she comes from a mountain biking background. Most of her UCI, if not all of her UCI world titles are in mountain biking, and she's the reigning cross-country mountain bike Olympic champion. And, you know, she's not old, but certainly at when she won the gold medal in the cross-country race in the Olympics, a lot of people kind of thought she might retire because she had just accomplished so much. But she kind of came out, you know, right after she had won that gold and said, I want to win the Tour de France. I want to win that. And so she kind of gave herself like a 3-year window of time to try to achieve that. And started training for it this year. And so she, in 2025, like literally like this year, she returned to competitive road cycling for the first time since like 2018. That's a long time out of road biking, like racing, and does just immediately super well, which isn't that surprising because she's won some, you know, gravel races. She is, you know, won the gravel world championship in 2022. So she's just like a very good cyclist. And she won the Paris-Roubaix Femmes, where that's a very different race than the Tour de France. Like, it pays to be more powerful. So she was kind of like racing at her natural sort of size then. And then just kind of disappears for a little while after May. So kind of just stops racing, starts prepping for the Tour de France. And then when she reemerges for the Tour de France, she's like considerably smaller, and kind of was just immediately forthright, like, because it's noticeable with the fact that she had intentionally lost 4 kilos for the Tour. So because it's a longer stage race, it's 9 stages. There's a considerable amount of climbing in the second half of the race, and she wanted to give herself that advantage. And she was also upfront with the fact that she relied heavily on the team physicians and the team nutritionists, and did, you know, achieve that weight loss in a very methodical, healthy way. And that's kind of what she put out. And then also said, like, I understand that this is not necessarily healthy. And like, it is not my intention to stay at this weight for very long, which is basically exactly what Greg said back in the 80s, like verbatim. Like, this is temporary. It's for a specific purpose. And then I'm going to go back to my training size. There was just a lot of pushback during the tour, like during the race, and then after. Like, people, there were publications, there were social media posts, people just calling her out for being too small, for setting a bad example for women, for girls, for being unhealthy. And like, she's a very small person to begin with. And she looks small. But honestly, like, put any small woman on a road bike or any bike, and they look small. And then just like absolutely dominates a couple of stages on the tour. Like, the women's Tour de France is 9 stages, so 9 days only, compared to the men's tour, which is 21 stages. So it's shorter. But a lot of the climbing in this year's course happened really like after stage 5. And so she ends up winning stage 8 by like a lot. And, you can kind of tell when you're watching the end of a mountain stage on the tour, the riders always look kind of out of gas. Like, they're messed up, but they're like, it's okay. We're fine. The other riders coming across the finish line looked absolutely devastated on that stage. I went back and watched clips of it, and it's almost like they realized that there's like another level of cycling performance that exists. And Pauline found that level.
Do you remember when, I think it was 2024, potentially 2023, when there was a time trial in the men's race, and one of the two that were fight, not Pogacar, the other guy, Vingegaard won by like an obscene amount for a time trial.
Yeah.
And then everyone was like, he's on drugs.
Uh-huh.
And he might be. You never know with sport. Like, whatever. I'm not saying he was or wasn't. But it was like, it was so quick.
Yeah. For
people to say, there's no way that person did that naturally. Or there must be another reason why they're so good. Rather than him just saying like, everyone just being like, wow, that was amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some people out there saying that, but that kind of reminds me of this. Instead of it being like, she's just that good.
Yeah.
There's some other reason that gave her an advantage that was almost quote unquote like unfair. There has to be something that makes the other athletes feel better in that moment.
Yeah. And then it came out for Vingegaard that he had basically spent like the entire spring like riding that course, because he's not a very good time trialist typically, and he knew that. And for him, it's like that time trial is really, really important for his overall standing in the GC. And so guess what? He just like he became a master of that leg and a master of that stage, and that's why he won by so much. And then you take Pauline, you take one of the best cyclists on the planet, and get her to drop 8 pounds and put her on a mountain course. Yeah, she's going to do pretty well. And she did.
Yeah. And I think too, to kind of debunk or discredit some of the claims of it's unhealthy, like there's like a spectrum of health, and the middle is kind of, I guess, where a normal healthy person would want to be. And then on the other end of the spectrum is considered like unhealthy. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have like, you could say there's the athlete who in some instances, it's not healthy.
Yeah. But
athletes are put on this pedestal of being the healthiest.
Yeah.
And so when there's just, it's a conflicting kind of situation that we have here, because it's like athletes are meant to be these people that young girls or young people look up to strive for hard work and, physical superiority. And then as soon as somebody does something that just goes like beyond, that doesn't fit into the athlete mold, then everything is discredited. But really, like, that's just what being an athlete is sometimes. It frankly like isn't healthy in some instances.
I think in most instances, professional athletics or elite athletics is not healthy.
I agree. I don't think it's healthy physically, but I also don't think it's healthy emotionally or mentally.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, we've seen documentaries about athletes who retire, and we know people right now who are in the process of retiring who aren't doing well because their identity is so tied up into it.
Yeah.
So not only are you feeling the effects, and you as in like the elite athlete feeling the effects of just physically demolishing your body over the course of time, doing your sport for many years at an elite level, but you have no idea who you are anymore without the sport.
Yeah. And there are some sports where there are legitimate health concerns. Like there are some sports that are so unhealthy that professional sporting organizations have had to make changes. And the one that really comes to mind is the NFL and concussion protocol. And that one's really recent, like in the last decade. That's changed. Like there are most like college and high school programs now have more specific requirements for helmets off versus helmets on. And definitely how an athlete is treated after they have potentially, a concussion, which there was a whole thing on the women's Tour de France this year that was an egregious violation of a reasonable concussion protocol, but that's a bigger discussion. But I think by and large, we can, like, society's willing to accept risks associated with men's sports. Like men can kind of just be athletes, and that the risk that comes with that is overlooked, maybe because oftentimes they're making more money, they're providing for their family, there's like definitely inherent sexism. But women athletes, just like in so many other areas, have to be not only the professional athlete but also a role model, and a mother, a daughter. They have to check these boxes of traditional feminism while trying to be a legitimate athlete. And that's where I see the double standard start to come in. It's like we're willing to accept that men's sports have some risks and aren't necessarily healthy, but we're not willing to accept that, or as willing to accept that about women's sports. And that's sort of where I start to have a problem, or this breaks down. And then, within that, okay, well, what is the argument? What is the argument, like specifically against Pauline and this weight loss? And the argument seems to be, it's not healthy, which is vague because how do you define that? Mm-hmm. And then it's not a good example. Like you're not setting a good example. Or what are the other athletes going to do if this becomes the standard for elite racing? And so we can kind of break those three down. So we'll go with, it's not healthy, it's not a good example, and it's not fair. Those are the arguments. So the health thing, I think that this is, when you look at safety concerns in women's sports, and this, like, there's a long history here about, society's concern over women's health.
Do you remember when women weren't allowed to run the marathon?
Yeah. I mean,
they weren't allowed to run the marathon.
No.
Because you have to protect the baby maker.
And that seems to be like the biggest concern is reproductive health.
Well, athletes are losing their menstrual cycles. Like, trust me, Pauline is not the only one on the tour who doesn't have a menstrual cycle. If
right.
That's the case.
And if it's like hormone health that you're concerned with, like you can't for a second say that low body fat percentage of weight loss doesn't also impact men's hormone health, because it definitely does. Like no one's asking Pogačar when the last time he had an erection was, but like you can bet that men losing a ton of body fat and training the volume that they're training and then racing 21 stages on the Tour de France, like they're not making babies.
Yeah, I mean, we know people who we've worked with from CrossFit, like men who have had their hormones tested and they're not good. And these aren't even elite. Yeah. These are just people trying to make it to the CrossFit Games. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not just women.
No.
But no one talks about the testosterone issue.
Right. And that's, I think, because women's role in society has for a long time been to be baby makers. And so like men can do whatever they want. They don't have to be the ones that like remain pregnant for 9 months. So this like reproductive concern with women is, and even like, what was it? Ski jumping. I think that was the reason why women weren't allowed to ski jump for a long time, because they actually thought that the impact of landing would have some deleterious effect to the uterus.
They tried to get rid of it in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Also. And that was recent. And I'm not sure that that's the case, but it's like, instead, oh, well, maybe it wasn't making enough money. So instead of trying to like make it equal, let's just get rid of it.
Yeah. We don't need to worry about that. The number of sets that women play in tennis. Like there's this belief that women can't play more sets. Like they're not capable of playing more sets. Right? There's what underlies this is that women, there's a reason to be concerned about women, but not men, which that to me says like women are less capable than men. And so we need to worry about their safety. Men can do what they want. That's what underlies that.
I mean, okay, how about this? There's no professional football league. Like women just don't really play football.
Well, there's a lot of I mean, combat sports are ones where you see, tons of limitations. Like you see professional American football doesn't exist for women. The regulations in boxing are different. If you look at, so soccer and lacrosse and like contact sports, the rules for allowable contact, different, like, there are differences that run through basically, every single sport that are based in sexism and misogyny and this sort of belief that women are less capable of physically demanding activities than men. And that's just it. Like, look at women in gymnastics. Like, they compete in different events. They don't do rings, they don't do parallel bars, they don't do pommel horse. Like there are things that they're perfectly capable of doing, but they've just never been given the opportunity to do it, and so they don't. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
You know what I mean. So back to the health, I think it's the issue is that you're defining health in one way. There are lots of ways to define health, and if we're concerned about physical health, let's be consistent at least in, like, why are we more concerned about a very thin cyclist than we are about Ilona Maher, who's running full speed into other human beings?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's because Ilona Maher, even though she's running full speed into other human beings, visually is capable of carrying children.
And fighting for that. Like setting a good example, quote, good example.
Yeah. And
I'm not saying she's not. It's just like that's how she's perceived in society right now, which I love.
Oh, totally. Yeah. But I think we are normalizing a lot of different body types in sports. And it's not like they haven't been there. It's just like what the media has shown us has not included people like Ilona Maher. And so that was something that was really noticeable last year in the Olympics, was just the diversity of bodies and athletes that were on display, which I love. And I think we need to do more of that, but we can't not include athletes like Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, who are phenomenal at what they do. It's just like the pendulum for body diversity and acceptance has swung kind of way over towards, more inclusion, more visibility of large-bodied people. And that has, I think, created maybe a slightly more intolerance for people like Pauline, who are the way they are because of the sport that they do. And to some degree, sports will always select for certain body types, and we'll talk more about that when we talk about the potential advantages. But Pauline is not playing sevens rugby. She's not going to line up on the pitch with Ilona Maher. That's not how that. Maybe
she played rugby as a young child and she was self-selected out.
Maybe she got hurt doing that.
Yeah. Maybe not rugby, but another sport.
And then, that says nothing of athletes who present visibly very healthy, but struggle with mental health because of not having support, because of coaches or people in their support system who are abusive, things like that. Like you can't judge with your eyes someone's situation. And, someone said to either to me or in a comment that I read, well, what about this athlete who came out and spoke about basically being pressured by her team to lose weight to compete in world tour races? And there's nothing acceptable about that. And I think that there's a line where if an athlete makes a decision on her own or on their own to do something that may benefit their performance, and that's done in a healthy way, that's different than feeling pressure to change your body by a team manager or someone like that when you don't want to, and you don't believe that it will benefit your performance. In fact, you might believe that it will inhibit your performance. Mm-hmm. So that's very different. But you have no way to tell that by just looking at someone. That person has to tell you. And Pauline has come out and told us. And so then you have to decide, am I willing to believe that what this person is telling me is the truth? Or do I want to think she's lying because it better suits the narrative that I want to be true?
Yeah. I think what you said about the way that people look and that being the determining factor of health or not, there are so many, specifically female athletes, who may present as having appropriate amounts of body fat, especially young athletes, young women, with disrupted menstrual cycles for a variety of reasons, because they may have REDs, even if they're not super lean. They might be struggling with overtraining, some form of REDs, like all the different symptoms. Maybe they're not eating right after training, and that can create an energy deficit in the day. And they can present as, what someone would look at as a normal, healthy adolescent athlete.
Yeah.
It just, you don't know.
No, you don't. And I think that's one of the most important things that has happened in modern sports medicine has been redefining the female athlete triad to be more inclusive of a broader spectrum of symptoms in athletes. Because the female athlete triad really, which you probably remember, because I certainly remember it being discussed when I was growing up and doing sports, was really like doctors were only willing to look at athletes who visibly appeared to have disordered eating patterns, so very skinny, were showing signs of menstrual dysfunction and also presenting with low bone mineral density. And so if you're only willing to consider that those athletes are being impacted by an energy deficiency, not only in sports but in life, you're missing a ton of people. And that's why when it was redefined by the IOC in around 2014, REDS not only includes athletes in larger bodies, but it also includes men. Mm-hmm. And it's basically, it broadens the symptoms that a person can experience when they don't feed themselves, either acutely or chronically around training. And that has led to overall a great improvement in nutrition, especially with endurance sports. I don't think that it is a coincidence that occurred in 2014, and that preceded basically the endurance world accepting that calories are good about 6 years later,
accepting carbs.
I mean, that's the thing. Endurance athletes used to sort of train to bonk. It was
honestly, it was like a badge of honor to not eat during long runs.
If you ate during long runs or during cycling, you were weak.
Yeah.
Athletes and team managers and coaches, you just were encouraged to completely empty the tank, bonk.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't until 2020 when the endurance world started to catch on to this, eating as much as we possibly can while maintaining a productive body weight. Actually, even if that body weight is a little higher than maybe I would want to believe that it is, that level of acceptance is relatively new. Mm-hmm. So, but all of that started when when the medical world and then, society as a whole was willing to look at other people. Mm-hmm. besides just skinny girls. Yeah. I mean, that's still sort of one facet of health. And again, like you look at men and women on the world tour, or really any athlete in season, like I think I heard someone say, if someone sneezed on one of those women, like they'd probably have to go to the hospital. That is how fragile your immune system is when you're like, and that's when a lot of people would define those athletes as having spectacular form, like being so prepared for racing. But to get to that point, you have to sacrifice so much of what literally defines health. Like your ability to battle infection is extremely depressed when you are in season. That's not healthy.
No. I would argue that almost all elite sports aren't healthy.
Yeah.
I just don't think that they are. But that's like I said to you in the car when we were talking about this, if someone were to say, like, Alex, I need you to sacrifice your menstrual cycle and potentially your bone density long term to be the best in the world, and I don't care what sport, I would do it. And I think most athletes, most people who care about a sport that have been doing the sport since they were a young child, would 100% choose that option, because that is everything to them. Yeah. That is their career. People sacrifice things all of the time for their careers.
Yeah.
Like whether it's their mental health, like people are so stressed out because of their careers and their lifestyles, because like they don't know how to just like take a breather or make less money. But like athletes, especially women athletes, they're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to sacrifice aspects of their health for their careers.
Like you can be a corporate lawyer and literally shorten your life by the amount of mental energy that you expend on your job.
Or the fact that you're only sleeping 5 hours a night.
Right. That's fine. But it's not fine to lose your period when you're in season competing as a, whatever athlete. That's not this, like, none of this is to say like amateurs should be, pushing limits like that. Like you kind of have to understand, like there's a difference between an amateur athlete and a hobbyist and someone who's making a living doing this. This is different. And maybe that's where the, are we setting a good example, and how do we talk about that? But I think you want to like, let's draw a line in the sand for a second and say like, what is it about elite sports that we like? Why are we watching elite sports? Are we watching elite sports because we want to see people be healthy and balanced and normal body weight and not impacting their long-term health in any way at all whatsoever? No, that's not why we watch elite sports. And I think, once you can get over your visceral response to hearing me say that, or anyone say that, you can probably agree, right? Mm-hmm. Like we're not watching NFL football. What if there was just no tackling allowed in NFL football at all? Because not only would that reduce concussion risk, we're tearing fewer ACLs. We're no longer pulling hamstrings. We're not dislocating AC joints. The risk of that, of any kind of injury goes down, and people's health improve if we stop tackling in football. That's never going to happen. That is never going to happen. And so I'm just saying, like, we can allow women to live in that space too. And be athletes and make a living as an athlete, make decisions for their performance as an athlete, and stop holding them to this stupid fucking health standard.
Okay, well, what about this? To go back to the amateur athlete not risking their health. But how do like if somebody is an amateur athlete and they want to become pro, or they want to be the best amateur athlete that they can be, that's their choice.
You can still make that choice. I think that the responsibility lies with professional sporting organizations and athletes to at least be somewhat transparent with what they're doing, why they're doing it, mm-hmm. and what the long-term plan is. And I think generally speaking, like people are doing a better job at that, and they've been doing it a long time. Like maybe not bodybuilders, but like there's tons of men bodybuilders who croak because they're not because of bodybuilding, but because of the massive amount of steroids that they take. There are amateur athletes out there who will put on the facade of caring about health, but they will take illegal substances to like improve their performance. There's been people like jabronis taking EPO for literal decades, a substance that can kill a person in the wrong amount, just to move up from a Cat 3 racer to a Cat 2.
Yeah, but that's on them.
100%.
Like, that's totally on them. So, and like, maybe the difference is because they're not in the spotlight, it doesn't matter as much.
I mean, you can look at what drives a person to do that. It's a hell of a lot more than what the professionals are doing. Like, that's something that's driven by ego, that's societal, that's this like hustle culture, individual achievement. There's so much that underlies a person's decision to like put themselves at risk for a marginal amount of gain. And, you know, while I think there's some level of responsibility with professional sporting organizations, they certainly can't carry the burden of people's individual choices to do things, take things, get things, rely on aids that they can find on the internet. Like, at some point you have to take some level of personal responsibility. And if like something's worth the risk to you, sure. I think that you need to be cautious with amateur, like kid athletes, teenagers, young adults.
Somebody needs to take responsibility there.
Yeah. And I think that is,
but if like a 25 to 30-year-old person, I mean, we're talking about sacrificing health, but there are people I know in CrossFit who are sacrificing careers, sacrificing relationships to do something that they get nothing from.
$0.
Except maybe some personal satisfaction or because they really like working out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm looking at that like, but why? And like, sure, maybe they make it to the pros, but I'm like, that's not worth it for me. And I think the same thing about losing a bunch of weight for running, or which would probably make me better. But like, what's the trade-off?
Yeah.
And I think pros can look at that and think that's worth the trade-off because I gained so much from it.
Yeah.
At the same time, someone like Prévot is like, there are people who can perform at certain body compositions or with certain body types that allow them to be better at the sport.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people, men and women included, who simply would not be able to perform at that low body fat, whatever it may be, 4% for a man, or maybe like, I don't know, 8 or 10 for a woman.
Yeah.
Who just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people in CrossFit who probably physically, from a performance standpoint, might benefit from having 5 or 10 pounds less body fat, but cannot compete without that body fat because their body can't do it. So that's also partially the way that sports select.
Yeah.
It's just, and it doesn't just apply to body fat. It's other things.
Yeah.
It's the way Michael Phelps' body was. It's just like, there's something that makes people great at certain sports.
Yeah.
And it might just be that somebody is very, 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 very good at biking because they can output and recover at a really low body fat percentage for a certain period of time.
Yeah. 100%. And at the end of the day, if an adult says, my performance and health suffered because I tried to lose 10 pounds because I saw, someone else, I saw this professional do that. That's a pretty thin, that's not it. That's not the reason. It's for a deeper belief. And that is a belief that is worth checking from time to time, especially when the data on performance isn't there, aside from health impacts. Like, I think that's a very thin argument. And there are certain people out there who are highly influenceable, who probably come from a challenging background with sports or diet or fitness or nutrition or all of those things. And I feel for those people. I know, like, I've interacted with enough of them and they're as adults to know that they're out there. But the vast majority of people that I've interacted with in my lifetime who are pursuing amateur athletic goals are not those people, which means they're making informed decisions on their own, considering, not only maybe what the top level athletes are doing, but also what makes sense for them, what's achievable, what makes them feel good, what does the science say, what are their coaches saying? Like, that's how most people make decisions. And I think we can kind of separate out the professional level athletes and organizations and, the people who deal with collegiate sports and teens and young adults. And both of those groups have a different obligation to their athletes and as athletes than everyone in the middle.
It is not the elite's responsibility to worry about the people who might use the elite as an example to do something unhealthy.
Correct. And that is
their job, is to be the best that they can at their sport.
And I think this is a responsibility that is placed very in a very different way on women athletes than men. And so I think that's a great transition into that. Are we setting a good example piece of this argument, which people basically said, you're setting a bad example for girls, for other athletes, yada, yada, yada. And I think that, again, because of those things that we've talked about, like, that falls apart. And it's also like, what lens are we looking through? Like, is she setting a bad example? Or is she showing what like commitment to a sport can look like? Not commitment to performing specifically in the Tour de France, but this is a woman who has been doing this sport since she was a teenager.
Well, what about this argument? The fact that, and we've talked about this again in CrossFit, women don't get paid as much as men. So guess how they make their money? Marketing.
Yeah.
By marketing, they're a business. They have to be on social media more. They have to present themselves in a certain way. They have to have other partnerships in order to make enough money to support what they're doing, to get the team enough exposure. And so that in itself inherently puts more eyeballs on them, which makes people, leads people to think that they have a larger responsibility for taking care of the people who follow them.
Well, look, and there's a long history of like hypersexualization in women's sports. And you can look at the history of the WNBA if you want to understand how that has been. I mean, look at back in the 80s or early 90s where they were playing in spandex. One of the first Olympic sports that women were allowed to compete in was tennis. And they were only allowed to compete in it because it was feminine. It looked feminine. They could wear skirts, and they were forced to wear corsets while they competed. Like, women were coming off the tennis court, taking their corsets off and bleeding, because that's what a corset does when you try to play a sport. Like,
I would never want to play a sport in a corset, but you bet that if I lived in that time, I would bite that bullet to play sports.
Like, strap me up.
I wouldn't be happy about it.
Are those whalebones? Yes. So there's that. And that still exists. Like, look at gymnastics. Like, look at figure skating. Like, the aesthetic.
Beach volleyball.
Bikinis. The focus on the feminine aesthetic in women's sports is something it's not even hard to miss. And so you look at all of those sports that exist, and then look at cycling. Look at the Tour de France. They're riding the same bikes. They're wearing the same outfit. They're wearing the same sunglasses. They're wearing the same helmet. There is nothing sexual about that sport. And like, why don't we take a second and celebrate that? But no, we're not going to do that, because we can still find a way to focus on a body. And that's the thing. Like, I think that from a sporting standpoint, for a long time, like when you watch men's sports and you're watching sports. When you watch women's sports, you're watching women. Yeah. And there's a difference there. And I think you have to catch yourself. And that's like, I catch myself doing it. I think there's probably a lot of people who watch Pauline cross the finish line on the final stage, and like, or see her in interviews or whatever, and they have a reaction to her body, and they don't even realize that they're having it.
I don't know. Sometimes I have a reaction to the men on the tour's bodies. I'm like, but how?
Yeah. But you can kind of accept that, like, it's part of the sport.
Yeah.
So, are we setting a good example? Like, broaden the lens really quick, and just, you can see how problematic, like, women's sports have come a long way, but there's a long way to go. And that is a very small subset of our society. Like, if we're worrying about the examples being set, we need to be looking harder at social media, like what young people are exposed to in school. Like, what are the examples being set by parents? Like, that's, again, it's too much. It's too much to place on a professional athlete, and it's not fair. It's fundamentally not fair. And like, I just think that there's more good that can be focused on. Like, why consider the good example that's being set? Like, consider the lens.
Yeah, and I think if you look at, I grew up playing some high-level sports. I remember I had a dietitian come in for skiing or golf, and that dietitian basically said that jam was bad. I will like forever remember that, which I just think back and think, how on earth did they find that woman? And why was she exposed to adolescent women? Thankfully, it like didn't have a big impact on me at the time, but like it had an impact on Georgia, who was on my team. And I think, you know, there might be people out there who do deal with adolescent athletes and think like, oh, geez, you know, but they can change the dialogue.
Yeah.
And I think there's value, especially for somebody who wants to commit their life to athletics, to saying to these young athletes, men or women, saying, look, like there might be times in your sport where you're faced with a decision to manipulate your body weight.
Yep.
And that is true for any sport. I mean, even for ski racing, I was telling you, we were like calipered, like did the pinch test, and I was 20. Actually, I think I was 17 because I was on the national development team.
But like, why?
I don't know, to measure body fat, because that was whether that was determined for fitness. I don't know. I mean, I could go and ask. I know one of the coaches, but it, like, that's the thing is like, it's part of sport. And so maybe you just take it as instead of just like turning a blind eye to it or shunning the athletes who are doing it at the top level, like saying like, this is how we're going to approach that. And like take some case studies and say like, you know, for example, like Pauline did it this way and this was the healthy way. Like she didn't compete while in a calorie deficit. She came back when she was stronger. Like ask for more information from the team so that it can be provided to younger athletes. It's a lot of it is dialogue. It's a lot of it is just having more information rather than turning a blind eye and saying like, oh, don't worry about your body weight. Like athletes are going to worry about their body weight, especially in certain sports. It's kind of like those kids that were just like never, ever were allowed to drink and their parents never talked to them or told them how to drink responsibly. And so then they get to like high school or college and they just like go crazy rather than like being exposed to it in small doses and like being talked about in an open household. And then they're not like, they don't go to the extreme and get alcohol poisoning. Not saying that's always the case, but it's like, you know, come to me if you're starting to think about your body weight. Let's talk about it in a healthy way.
There's no, you learn like regulation. To external.
Like alcohol is a part of being an adolescent. Body weight, unfortunately, or maybe just part of it, is part of being an adolescent athlete.
Right.
In most sports.
Yeah.
So figure out a way to make it like okay.
Don't abdicate responsibility as the adult in a young person's or young athlete's life by putting that burden on a professional athlete that doesn't even know you or your kid. There was
the swim club here in Fernie hired not a dietitian to talk to their athletes, but a psychologist to talk to their athletes about nutrition. Somebody who's has a psychology background, knows about nutrition enough, has taken enough education in it to be able to kind of speak to both, but primarily is a psychologist. And that is what people should be doing. You're not bringing in a dietitian who only knows about nutrition. You're bringing in somebody who works with kids on mental and like emotional development around nutrition. That's the direction that we need to go in.
And again, these conversations are happening differently with, you know, men and women. There are things being said by men athletes that if you just like put like a female or woman athlete in the same, like just have them say the same thing, like I don't know what would happen. It's crazy. Like there was this interview between Alexi Vermeulen, who's a gravel cyclist, and Keegan Swenson, who obviously is a lot of people know him. He won Leadville. He's also a gravel guy. And they do this little like chit chat podcast, and they were catching up before Leadville, and they were basically just shooting the shit about their body weight. You know, it was like, I got on the scale this morning. Can you guess how much I weighed? And then like they were kind of like, you know, thinking about guessing each other's weight. And then, you know, one of them was 142 and maybe the other one was like 139. And then they were talking about how that, you know, is overweight. And if they went to Europe, the Europeans would be grabbing them by the skin. And just, I was like, holy moly. Like, can you imagine if this banter was going on, you know, between, instead of Keegan and Alexi, like Hannah Otto and Paige Onweller, like just put two athletes from the same exact sport doing the same exact series of races that happen to be women, just sit them down and have them have that same conversation. And then like, let's check in with how that feels to observe, because it's going to feel totally different. And that's like, I think one of the most perfect examples of the discrepancy between the burden placed on women versus the burden placed on men. And for the record, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that conversation. Like, I have such a neutral vantage point with body weight that I'm like, oh, I can't believe they'd say that. Like, what kind of example are they setting? Like, I'm able to look at what's happening, like, and feel pretty much nothing about it except for some like irony. You know, just it kind of caught me off guard as a conversation to be had. But then immediately I'm like, what would it be like if women were having this conversation? And it'd be different.
Yeah, I mean, even, I don't know, you can look at that from a bunch of different perspectives. If you look at young boys who have eating disorders, they're also not going to, like, there's a shame involved because of the double standard that's created. Like, men should just be able to talk about their body weight and pinch each other's skin and it'd be like cool. But like, that's having an impact too. Mm-hmm. But no, you know?
Yeah.
Which is sad. But like, there's
so many factors that underlie that.
Yeah.
You can't just say like, oh, it's because these two guys are having this banter about body weight. Like, no, it's much deeper than that.
Yeah.
And it means like the way to address it is not by like holding professionals to a different standard of being role models or being sensitive or whatever, changing the way that they're living their life or pursuing their career. It probably starts at home.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think about like, there's probably that one dude who's like, maybe just like can't lean out, still pretty good, and gets made fun of, you know, as a teenager or even like an adult male.
Yeah.
And like, that's just a recipe for an eating disorder.
Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, I don't know. It's such a delicate topic in isolation, but also just generally, like, there's so many different factors.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it starts from being able to discuss it in almost a neutral way.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's a loaded topic.
Yeah. And, you know, worth pausing and reflecting just briefly on the fact that just because we can be neutral about it and Pauline can be neutral about it and assuming Lexi and Keegan can be neutral about it, that doesn't mean that everyone who is thin in sports or thick or any size is not dealing with, like, that doesn't mean that this applies to everyone. Like, there are plenty of professional athletes out there who have active eating disorders. And that's it. Being a professional athlete doesn't shield you from that.
100%.
It's just like, what responsibility do athletes have to society as a whole?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny. Like, even if you think back to when we were in CrossFit, it wasn't really talked about. But now when a lot of the athletes who we competed against, some of them who are retiring, mm-hmm. are kind of coming out and saying like, yep, I had an active eating disorder.
Yeah. While working with a nutrition coach. And,
yep.
You know,
and I was selling my body to make money.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's a big can of worms.
I mean, what responsibility do like famous musicians have to be good role models? You know, it's that whole, it's like, well, famous musicians aren't role models because they aren't exercising. Like it's they don't exist on that spectrum of, or that continuum of like sickness, wellness, fitness, professional sports. Like they're not on there. So it's like they can do cocaine, they can drink, they can whore around, and that's fine for them because they're professional musicians and no one's expecting them to be any different.
I don't know.
You don't think so? It's different.
It's different for sure. But if you think about, you know, Sarah Bareilles talking about going on antidepressants and dealing with mental health issues, like that's celebrated. And I get that the conversation around mental health is expanding, which is a good thing. And people who are struggling, who have a platform, are celebrated for sharing it. Yeah. I imagine there's still a bit of a double standard to a degree. And I think more so now with social media. But I wouldn't, it's hard for me to say because I'm not in the music world as much as I am in the athletic world. Yeah. But I think just the fact that it's like, it's body and health in that way. Yeah. And it's such a hot topic right now. Yeah. I mean, even The Biggest Loser documentary coming out. Like that's going to be a whole thing.
Yeah. I think that the final part of this is the advantage side of things, and what advantage should athletes be allowed to chase? Should they be allowed to chase them? What is this going to do to the rest of the field? And I think that is, that's a real slippery slope from an argument standpoint, because every great athlete has some physical advantage. Like people who are the best at their sport typically are the best at the sport because they train really hard. And then they have a set of genetic playing cards that work to their advantage. Like Michael Phelps is, taller than most swimmers. He has a facial structure that allows him to get in more oxygen when he breathes. His lungs are larger than average. And you can look at look at track runners. Like they have longer lower leg bones. Like there are like sports at an elite level select for the most extreme body types often. Look at Usain Bolt. Like that guy was a physical anomaly because there were plenty of people who said he's way too tall to be a sprinter. But because of like his training and certain physical attributes that he had, like he became one of the best, if not the best sprinter that has ever run. Is that unfair? Is it unfair that professional volleyball players are over 6 feet tall? Or professional basketball players on the men's side are like pushing 7 feet?
Some would say.
But where does that stop?
I know. And there are sports where they standardize things because they don't want the determining factor to be on someone's body size. Like, for example, F1.
Yeah.
But that's not cycling. No. And that's not basketball. No one's saying you can't play basketball if you're taller than 6'5".
Yeah.
It just isn't the way things work.
Or like we're going to have a separate league for people who are over 6'5", so that it's fair for all the people that are under 6'5".
Yeah.
I mean, they could. Like, I would love to see sports segregated in a different way that is not biological sex. That would be great. I would love to see that. But, as it is, sports are an avenue for people to count some like latent sexism. And I think that starts to come out. It's really no different than the conversation around trans athletes, where it's such a small subset of athletes, but such a large concern. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because there are a lot of people who in their day-to-day life, they would never come out and say, I think trans people shouldn't exist. Or they would never come out and say, I think women are less capable than men, because that sounds awful. And they know that, but they can talk about sports, bathrooms, and prisons with regards to women and trans people. And they can be a little more forthright with like some underlying bias that they have, because there's this protective layer of, well, we're talking about fairness, or we're talking about health. Mm-hmm. When really, like, all you're talking about is your bias against women or your bias against trans people. That's it. So I think when you, like, everything else equal, like when you pull way back and you're honest with yourself about where these feelings come from, like then you can start to check yourself and have a more reasonable conversation that includes fairness. It includes health, and it includes whose responsibility it is to be a role model. When we think about not just like athletes being on a pedestal, but like, are they even the right people to be looking at for health examples, period? Because the answer to that is no. Whether you're a man, woman, trans person, just any kind of person, the answer to that is no. So like, where's your bias coming from?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. The idea that sports is healthy is actually ridiculous. I was talking to Addie Bracey. We were out for a run talking about ultra running and ultra distance competitions. I mean, even Leadville for you was 10 hours, but we're talking now, there's like 200-mile running races.
Yeah.
Where, she knows people who are so out of it during those races that they're hallucinating. And if it weren't for the fans, they wouldn't even know where they are.
Yeah.
How is that healthy? And yet, like, people are signing up for those races because it gives them credit. It makes them a better person. It makes them seem cooler.
Yeah.
That's not healthy either.
Well, look at Instagram and extreme sports. Like, look at skiers, look at downhill mountain bikers, look
Right?
at the pressure that social media puts on kids and young adults and not young adults to do ever increasing extreme things on their bikes or skis or boards or parkouring or whatever. And how many people are getting like very hurt by that or worse?
Yeah.
Like that's, and again, like this is that double standard of health. Like if we were, like think about Alex Honnold, like think about free solo. And what if that was a woman who was like, no, I'm going to free solo El Cap? People would lose it. Be like, no, that's unsafe. That's too dangerous. You can't do that. But like, Alex can go do it.
I mean, I was thinking that's not safe. He shouldn't do that.
I mean,
but yeah,
you know what I mean?
It probably would be different.
It would spark a different conversation, and you'd see a lot of concern and bias come out at that point.
Yeah, I think you can argue that. Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, this isn't about changing anyone's like view or perspective in one conversation. I think all this is like opening your eyes to having different conversations. And bias is really, really hard to get rid of. And it's not necessarily like our responsibility to always get rid of it, but we should be able to look at it and understand what our bias is, not just with sports, but with life generally, and understand when it comes in and how it might change the way that we see things, and at least get us to pause and understand that there are different perspectives to consider and other people might see things differently. And that even in that reflection, that doesn't mean that we have to determine who's right or wrong, because there may not be a right or wrong. There can just be a lot of things sort of true or that exist at one time. And the way that we see things is just one of those.
Yeah, well said.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, personally, I think it's just really phenomenal what Pauline did. Like winning the last two stages, like it was very exciting. She's extremely, extremely good bike rider. And it makes me excited to watch in the future and see what happens with the women's tour. I mean, the Zwift sponsorship, I think is through 2026. And I think the goal long term is to make it longer, to add it, to get it to 10 days. Maybe long term 3 weeks. I think a lot of the riders have been really open that they don't want a 3-week tour right now.
I mean, do the men even want a 3-week tour?
The thing about they have to take days off, and then really the final week of the men's tour is just sort of a charade. A lot of the men's riders were actually ticked that they changed the final stage this year, which is usually just the Champs-Élysées sort of ride around and drink champagne. Like it was an actual race day, and they were ticked, which I can also understand because at 21 days you're probably just ready to be done, but. I hope it continues to grow and grow organically and is just part of this increased focus and love and attention on women's sports. And, hopefully the prize purse needs to go up. Like it needs to be significantly higher than what it is now. I don't think there's any excuse for that, but there were some teams that walked away with like $500 from the tour. Mm-hmm. Which, like, that doesn't even cover one person's gel consumption. You know what I mean?
Speaking from experience.
But
yeah, that's tough. I mean, there's a lot of sports. I kind of was awake. I don't know. I was surprised at the lack of prize money in gravel.
Yeah.
And these are like pro athletes. Like they don't have jobs.
No.
And they're winning $5,000 for winning like the biggest race of the season.
Yep.
$5,000.
Yeah, it's pretty appalling.
I mean, I used to complain about CrossFit. I won like $3,500 at a local competition once.
Yeah, I think my top earning in a competition was $10,000.
And you weren't even that good.
I wasn't even that good. But like $10,000 for one competition's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
For kind of a middle of the pack CrossFit athlete.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know what? Work is being done. It will keep being done because people like us will make sure that it continues to be done.
Yeah. And people like, Steph Labe, Georgia Simmerling, and all those people who are bringing like elite women's sports into Canada, leagues,
well, even
soccer, hockey, like it's awesome.
Yeah, and at an amateur level, like I think that's awesome. I think it's almost more important to get recreational women, to get moms, to get working career women, to get women doing sports at a recreational level.
Yeah,
cycling,
more people to Unbound,
golf, swimming, whatever, because that demonstrates that is an example to kids, and it's like there's an avenue for you.
Yeah, I saw today running a mom with her kid.
Yeah.
And we talked about this on Ashley's podcast, how she coaches like women's recreational hockey.
Yeah.
She's like, it's awesome just to see them making themselves a priority and learning a new sport.
Yeah. I mean, it is my opinion that if we want to see more women in professional sports, we have to see more women in recreational sports. Yeah. And I think that's where I like to focus. So both myself and, the people I work with are that. But alrighty. That's it. Thanks for listening. If you want to know more details on the Tour de France Femme, they have a great Instagram account that you can follow. There's a lot of people who have YouTube channels, podcasts dedicated to tour coverage and women's cycling generally. So you can find loads of recaps, episodes, and information out there that are not going to be ours because that's not our area. You know where to find us. We're starting a fitness challenge soon, 100 days. You'll see more information on that coming out shortly. And that's it. If you like this, obviously like, subscribe, share. We really appreciate that. And we'll catch you on the next episode.